What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Sorry I've been away for a little bit. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Lost Mines of Phandelver starter set, and we're also going to be taking a look at the D&D Essentials kit, which came out in 2019. And we're going to look at these two products and how they kind of work together, and if you wanted to combine them to make one longer adventure, then how you would go about doing that, and sort of the things you might want to cut, the things you might want to include, some useful tips for running these two starter set adventures. Now, both of these adventures take place around the Neverwinter area, which is a pretty interesting sort of location. You have the Mere of Dead Men to the south, a small town of Leyland, Neverwinter to the north, and all of these adventures take place in this town of Phandalin. Now, the Lost Mines of Phandelver is actually the adventure of trying to find the Wave Echo Cave, which is the site of basically a forge which was used to create some magical weapons. And this is a really interesting kind of very almost linear sort of starter quest and starter adventure. If you are running for a new group who've never played before, I definitely would recommend this adventure. Now, the Lost Mines of Phandelver adventure actually begins with a Goblin Ambush. I think the Goblin Ambush is fairly decent, is a pretty cliche beginning, but also if you're running for a brand new group who've never played before, you can't really get better than this. And you meet a really interesting character along this adventure who is basically going to be an essential NPC character for the group, and that is a guy by the name of Sildar Hallwinter, a human warrior, and he's held prisoner here. So this is a really interesting little combat encounter that I'm a big fan of. So within this book we also have some additional information about Phandalin itself as a town, which is really interesting. We have the important NPCs of the town. We also have a map of all the main places they might wish to explore. And what we also have are a bunch of side quests that your characters might discover in this town. So I quite like this whole chapter, and you can actually have several games just exploring this one chapter because there's so much to see and do, so many interesting locations to explore. So I really like this. Now, within the town there's also another sort of interesting thing going on. There's a group there known as the Red Brand Ruffians, who are kind of in league with the big bad of this adventure, somebody known as the Black Spider, and they are working out of an abandoned, like a ruined manor, and this is the underground section of that manor, and it's a pretty simple, pretty easy to make sort of dungeon. It's quite short, it's quite nice, it's quite interesting, and there's a lot of room to expand and explore and to sort of build on from this. There's one of my favourite encounters here in Area 8, which includes a Nothic, which is kind of an interesting creature. If you look at the lore of a Nothic, it's like a kind of a mage that has kind of ruined themselves with magic, so to speak, corrupted themselves. So part 3 of this adventure is known as the Spider's Web, and it's basically where, as a group, your party will basically be trying to find out information on this Black Spider. In the ruined manor, you will actually find a note from the Black Spider right here, and that will basically lead you to try and find some information and find out some clues. And the Spider's Web involves a lot of different side quests. I really recommend some of them, and I don't recommend others. For example, I recommend Agatha's Lair. Agatha is a banshee, and that is a really interesting combat encounter. Also, some of the art in this book is absolutely fantastic, as we expect from Wizards of the Coast. But the whole Ruins of Thundertree section, I'm a huge fan of, because this is basically this small town closer to Neverwinter than Phandalin is, was basically ruined and taken over by a green dragon by the name of Venomfang. And you can easily sort of create links between this dragon and the cult of the dragon if you wish to go down that route. You can also use the twig blights and the tree blights as kind of a hint of the Sunless Citadel adventure, and maybe have links leading your party towards that as a potential side quest. Cragmore Castle is fairly interesting. It's quite a decent sort of map, an interesting ruin, but it's actually run by a lot of goblins, and I felt like this whole combat encounter was way too similar to the Goblin ambush encounter at the start of the game. At this point, your characters have fought goblins, they know them as an enemy, and I feel like trying to introduce something a little bit different here might be an interesting way of going about it. Now, towards the end of this book, we have Way of Echo Cave, and this is where the adventure comes to its natural conclusion. And this is quite a sizable dungeon crawl here, but I found that the adventures here they can do with a little bit of tweaking to make them a little bit more interesting. So I have some suggestions for you. So this is the map here of Way of Echo Cave, and in this your adventurers, your party will be trying to find the Black Spider located in areas 19 and 20 here, to find the Black Spider and to get rid of them, to slay them as it were. Now I felt like a few of these in combat encounters and the areas here are a little bit naff. So I have some suggestions on how I went and made them a bit more interesting for my players, and they went down really well. First thing I did was, in the mine tunnels, I actually got rid of the ochre jelly and I put a gelatinous cube here. I had the gelatinous cube actually take up, well, one of these squares, which is 10 foot by 10 foot here. And that seemed to work. And because there's not much life in these in the Way of Echo Cave, what I had was the party would just walk along, and all of a sudden somebody would just walk straight into the gelatinous cube. So the gelatinous cube would basically be a trap, and this made this whole section of it really interesting. This winding tunnel section where you have no idea where you're going, and it's kind of a bit of a maze almost. So that was quite an interesting encounter that I introduced, which the players really enjoyed. The Sturges are great. They're basically like giant insects that will latch onto somebody and constantly suck their blood every turn. My recommendation for running this is pick one character and have the Sturges target that one character. Either one or two characters I would focus on. And this will make quite a simple basic enemy seem quite deadly. We have some skeletons later on in this, some ghouls. Ghouls are absolutely fantastic because of their ability to paralyze. So ghouls come in really handy, and I really like ghouls, especially for early levels in the game, or for those lower levels. And also we have some situational effects like poison gas. All of those work really well together and make the encounter quite interesting. So as you can see in Area 9, the Great Cavern, we actually have 7 ghouls. What I recommend is actually having maybe 3 ghouls and 1 ghast, or kind of having a few more higher power enemies here instead of what the book recommends. Obviously this does require you having the monster manual as well, so I understand if you just want to run the 7 ghouls, or maybe run fewer ghouls but make them a little bit tougher, increase their HP, maybe increasing the amount of damage that they deal, make them a little bit more dangerous to encounter. We also have one of the most interesting enemies in here. We actually have a flame skull. Personally, I felt that we didn't need zombies as well as a flame skull. At the level that the players are in this, a flame skull by itself seems to work as a pretty sizable opponent and pretty sizable enemy. So I felt like having, another kind of bulk of enemies like zombies and things wasn't really necessary, unless the flame skull wanted to escape and you kind of make it like the flame skull will make the zombies rise from the dead. That makes it quite interesting. But so when we actually look at the temple here, we actually then come into combat with our big bad. Now I gotta be honest with you guys, I personally found that Nesnar, the Black Spider, the big bad of this whole 1 to 5th level campaign, was pretty weak by comparison, and I felt that the situation of kind of where they were fighting, it's basically in this ruined temple, was really naff. I feel like it just wasn't interesting at all. So my recommendation would be add some situational effects. Have him turn round when the adventurers turn up, and maybe declare that if he cannot have this cave and all the magic within it, then nobody can, and then he begins bringing down the ceilings. So as a result, the players have to try and avoid falling boulders. Maybe the giant spiders will join a little bit later in the fight and give Nesnar an opportunity to use some powerful higher level spells than he currently has. These are all things that you might want to sort of play around with and test out, but it's something that I would recommend. Maybe even turning round and having Nesnar be a character, somebody from the one of your players' backstories, that is also a really emotional roleplay moment. So, the adventure contained within this essentials kit is known as the Dragon of Icespire Peak. And the general concept is that there is this white dragon that has been flying around the Phandalin area causing absolute nightmare and carnage. And basically what this is just a book filled with additional locations in the Phandalin area. So the idea is that your players, they know about this dragon and they will go to different locations, basically points of interest. My first suggestion to you is, if this is known as the Dragon of Icespire Peak, your adventurers are probably going to want to head to Icespire Peak. We'll take a look at that sort of section of this adventure, and I'll give you some of my thoughts here. Icespire Hold is where your adventurers would expect to find Cragmore. That's the name of the young white dragon. And they're sort of expected to fight him around 6th level, which works out really well when combined with the Lost Mines of Phandelver. However, finding the Icespire Hold, it's not an easy feat. And then also travelling to the hold is not easy. And neither should it be, because this is a beautiful, awesome looking map that is really interesting and has a bunch of different stuff in it. Of course, if your adventurers get here and are able to sort of battle their way through it, they will eventually find the young white dragon in this keep, so they can basically jump straight to the end of this adventure and head there. So it's really important to be familiar with this section of the adventure and to be really like kind of have a good idea of what this adventure is going to entail, because the odds are your adventurers are going to want to head straight here if they hear about a dragon and they've just defeated the black spider. So as you can see, when compared to the last map, we actually have a bunch of different extra places to kind of explore on this map. We have Dragon Barrow, Loggers Camp, was this Falcon's Hunting Lodge. There's loads of different places to kind of go to and explore. And actually, when you buy this box set, you can actually unlock some additional ones in like Leylon, for example, on D&D Beyond. So that's really interesting, and I recommend you go and have a look at that. So the first chapter of this adventure, and of this box set I should say, is all about Phandalin, and there is some repeat of information here. But of course this just adds additional content for you as a dungeon master. Also have some quests and some side quests to get you into the adventure. Now this starter set comes with these. These are quest cards. So these are literal cards that you can just hand to your player that have these quests written out on them. So your players can literally keep track of the quests that they want to go doing and where they are and the important information. So it's really interesting. I highly recommend using these cards if they're available to you. Now as you can see here, we actually have quite a lot of quests. So this entire book is filled with basically just quests and information and basically side stuff to do while you are hunting down the black spider or hunting down Cragmore. All of this is useful information, and I highly recommend giving all these a read through, because some of these are super interesting, like side quests that your players might want to build on and delve deeper into. You might want to expand upon yourself. So the first place we're going to take a look at is called Axholme, and it is a dwarven fortress about a day's walk away from Phandalin. This is the actual map itself, and the first thing I've got to say about this dwarven fortress is mapping something like this out for a new DM is an absolute nightmare, and you don't really want to go handing the players a printout copy of this, so you're going to have to try and describe each room to them. It can be a little bit irritating. Maps like this are not my favourite. One thing that I've kind of noticed about this adventure, and kind of looking at this, like, of this Axholme sort of dungeon, is that there's not a massive amount of enemies in here. They actually leave quite a lot of rooms, as you can see by the descriptions here, empty. And I really like that. I don't like dungeons that feel so full and like too full, and like it's just it kind of makes it feel almost like just like a hack and slash, and that's not what Dungeons and Dragons is. It's a role-playing game. So having these rooms that are quite empty, but kind of they hint to things being there. This entire like dungeon can be quite a scary place to explore if you are willing to sort of delve into those horror aspects of the game. Now, not all of the places that you will explore in this adventure are like dungeons. They are there's a bunch of different types of places. One of the ones we've got here is Butterskull Ranch, and that's actually it's quite interesting. We've got some situations happening here. I don't really want to get too far into it, just in case there are some players watching. I don't want to ruin things too much, but either way, what you might find is that there are some interesting situations happening in these places that you would not normally expect things to happen. It might even be a thing that Butterskull Ranch is a home of one of your player characters, is somewhere that one of your player characters has worked, is where maybe they have family or friends that have been working there, so they might want to revisit these places. When you interlock and intertwine a character's backstory with these in-world places, it kind of creates more of a personal sort of sense of kind of enjoyment then from that player kind of going back in here and exploring it. So I do like places like this, these small places. They're not necessarily dungeons, you're not expecting to find monsters here, but they're always places of interest that you may want to visit. So we have here a place called the Circle of Thunder, and I really like this actually, because to put it simply, this is one of those places where if you head there, two characters performing a ritual to summon Gorthok the Thunderboar, which has its own stat block, is something really like weird and funny and just enjoyable. It leads to this fun interaction in this encounter. It's a fun place to explore. So here we are looking at the Dwarven excavation site, and again, like, we're looking at sort of situations where these aren't combat sites, these are exploration sites. These are focused on exploration. Okay, yeah, there's a few combat situations. We see you've got down here, I think this tells you all you need to know. But it's not a typical combat situation. This is an encounter, this is a situational encounter. This is something that sort of makes the world feel a bit more realistic instead of walking into a room and finding 4 pre-placed zombies. Right here, we actually don't have any combat in this one, for example. We actually have a role-playing situation meeting this guy called Falcon the Hunter. It's something that a lot of players may not like, because some players, they play D&D just for the combat. They like the combat, they like the exploration. This is part of the role-playing, so you can see we've got all aspects of the game contained within this box set. This is a role-playing situation here. There are benefits and there are negatives to running an adventure in this way. Basically, the issue with an adventure like this is it lacks spine. If you run the Essentials kit by itself, if you are planning on running the Dragon of Icespire Peak without the Lost Mines of Phandelver, this adventure lacks spine. There is no narrative story thread pulling you through. From the moment they find out about the dragon Cryovein, they can head to the Icespire Peak and they can begin to try and find the hold and try and fight this dragon. You know, that is going to take maybe a handful of adventures at most. If you are introducing this in addition to the Lost Mines of Phandelver, well then, now you have a lot more locations and locales to explore. You can really, you can go into a lot of detail about maybe, you know, exactly where are you heading. Tell me which hexes you are using to explore deeper into this region. And it gives some really interesting and fun and enjoyable places to kind of have your players explore around and to find out more information on. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you've found this useful. I hope you've enjoyed it. Sorry for not providing any content recently. I've been a bit ill, as you can tell by my voice. I'm not feeling myself at the moment, but doing good and excited to get back into making some more content for you guys. Have a great day. So long.